Welcome to the RDL Show. Ryan D. Leaf Show here. Follow us at RDL Show on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to the Ryan D. Leaf Show on YouTube. Listen via podcast on the Believe Podcast Networks. Hey, the draft happens. The only news out there still is Aaron Rodgers and whether or not he's going to be a Green Bay Packer come this fall. And everybody's talking about it. Everybody's got a differing opinion of what that may look like. I came from it from an angle of how others might look at it in terms of we've had some what would consider crotchety old man talk from Terry Bradshaw, and then from others in terms of, as an athlete advocate. So is this more of an entitled athlete, or is this about advocating for these players and them dictating, them deciding where they're gonna spend their career and their lives? And so I tend to land on the side of the advocacy part of all this simply because I am a former player. And the hard part in all of this is how much damn money is made by these players, right? There's a look at him possibly collecting $35 million to play quarterback. And a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL now are demanding that kind of money. So that immediately lends the belief to entitlement, right? You have all this, why can't you just be happy mentality? And I will say this, peace of mind and wellness, especially around your mental health, is priceless. There's no price for it. Just because you make $35 million doesn't mean that's okay. And that gets lost, and it has to. I mean, it's just too much money not to, because everybody and every fan who loves professional sports looks at that money and believes in their mind if they had that money, their life would be better. Now, I'm one that can truly be an example of having all the money you can imagine in the world and not being content and not being happy and not being peaceful. So that's not true, okay? So the entitlement piece is one that you can take. That's an angle you can take in terms of perspective. The other is, hey, he's given everything he's had to this organization for 16 years. He had to replace a legend, and his legacy is cemented as a 3-time MVP and a Super Bowl champion there in Green Bay. And maybe he's just fed up with the team taking him for granted, right? There has to be some that believe that the fact that they've only been to one Super Bowl and won one Super Bowl during the tenure of Aaron Rodgers has been a utter systemic failure by the Green Bay Packers, for the likes of the general managers, for the organization in a whole. And now Aaron Rodgers simply is stating, hey, I'm just sick and tired of it. This team would not have been in the NFC Championship game the last 2 years if it weren't for me, right? You remove Aaron Rodgers from the equation of the last 2 years of these teams, I'd say 8-8 best. They're a middle of the road team. The Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings are division champions the last 2 years, if that's the case. So he makes a difference. Now, I know in the eyes of a lot of people, in particular Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Matt LaFleur, in that system, they believe they can take mediocre quarterbacks and build Super Bowl contenders, a la Jared Goff in LA and Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. That's not the case. You can't throw Teddy Bridgewater into the Green Bay organization with a trade with the Broncos, let's say, and this team all of a sudden be a Super Bowl contender once again. This team is best off with Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback at the quarterback position, and it's maybe the only place where Aaron Rodgers could really be Super Bowl ready once again. Back-to-back NFC championships. They bolstered the defense, added some weapons on offense. I think this is his best chance to get back to the Super Bowl. But if he's gone, we go to the question of the day. If he goes, where does he go? And if he does go somewhere, which teams would Aaron Rodgers make an immediate Super Bowl contender? That's the question of the day. We'll get to it at the end of the show when we get into our Q&A, but that will be the question of the day. Which teams would Aaron Rodgers make into an immediate Super Bowl contender? I I fathom there isn't one. The best spot for him is Green Bay. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So let's bring in Sky. Jonathan and Charlie have decided to quit the show. The pressure, the mounting pressure of the bat. No, Charlie, finals week in college. Jonathan is getting an opportunity in his play-by-play career to really up his game and do some things. So we're really proud of him, and we applaud him, and we lift him up and support him in everything he does. So, Sky, we bring you in. We're going to talk about this Aaron Rodgers situation and how it's every day there's something new. Today it was, backhand, it is a backhanded compliment. It was supposed to be to make fun of the general manager by calling him Jerry Krause, but Jerry Krause produced 6 championship teams.
Yep.
Oh my God. I always butcher his name in Green Bay. Ryan
Gutekunst.
Gutekunst would love to be considered a 6-time champion and made fun of. Right? That's the goal here. So people close to Aaron Rodgers, like tightly knit in that thing, don't believe this is true. This is propaganda. I don't know if it's being placed out there. There's comments around the team that they're upset and looking into meddling charges, tampering charges, because San Francisco and Denver reached out to Aaron Rodgers and, measuring his willingness to want to go somewhere else. I don't know if that's true either, and it's hard. You can't prove it. I think it's more obvious or more possible that Aaron actually reached out to them himself and said,
"No, is that a faux pas if they do it player to player?
I don't see how it could be if the player reaches out and goes, "Hey, I hate this place. Come and get me." That's essentially what it is. And he can do that. He could do that any which shape. He could do that in a private way or in a public way because he has such a great following. He chose to, I think, do it in a private way. So no one would necessarily know about it, but it's out. We had Tom Silverstein on the NFL radio last night talking about, he's the beat writer for the Milwaukee Sentinel-Journal. He works for that team constantly. He says there's a 5% chance that Aaron Rodgers comes back to the Green Bay Packers. That is not a high percentage.
Yeah. That's even a bit high from some other people that have been talking about it. I think what it comes down to is, since Gutekunst has been in charge the last 4 years, Aaron Rodgers has gotten them to 3 NFC championship games, done everything except for win the Super Bowl. Come up against some buzzsaws at the wrong time. That's just the reality. It's one game. We talk about the Buffalo Bills in the early 90s, and they were the best team in the NFL until Super Bowl Sunday 4 years in a row, and that's just what happens. It's one single game. There are some other issues here. I mean, Devontae Adams, all-world receiver, and best friends and top target for Aaron Rodgers, came out on Twitter, and he's kind of a quiet guy social media-wise. And he came out on Twitter and just kind of put up like, you got to appreciate what you have while it's here or until it's gone kind of a thing. And that got people speculating too, that maybe he knows that the time is limited with Rodgers as well in-house and those kind of things. And Ryan, that leads us to the question of the day: who would he make a Super Bowl contender? But we got to kind of start in Green Bay first. I mean, what happens to the Packers if he loses? Because we could talk hypotheticals with Aaron Rodgers on any number of teams, but we have no idea where he might go, if he might go, all those things. But if he retires or leaves the organization, no matter where he ends up, if he leaves Green Bay, what happens to the Packers? You mentioned it, 13-3 last 2 seasons. The Bears 8-8, Vikings 7-9, Lions 5-11. So none of those teams over 500. But you take Aaron Rodgers out of the division, and the Bears and the Vikings improving, and we'll see what happens to the Lions. It's going to be a tight division at least. And if Green Bay, slips up, one of these other teams could certainly take them over. Who would you give the best?
If Aaron Rodgers isn't in Green Bay, Green Bay's is not an option. They're not a team that's going to. They're not going to be part of the division. They're going to probably be the 3rd best team in the division. It vaults Minnesota there, and if Justin Fields comes out and plays as well as a lot of people think he can, Chicago now is in the mix. Detroit has bolstered their offensive line like crazy. They're going to protect Jared Goff like Fort Knox. They're not going to have anybody really to throw to. Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC was a big get for them in the 4th round. But without Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay becomes a middle of the road team and fighting for a wild card, I think, is what that looks like. As for the question of the day, where does he go that makes him a contender? I have a hard time imagining him going anywhere else where there's a Super Bowl contending team ready. Now, if I think Green Bay's an 8-8 team without him, then I got to look around the league and look at some 8-8 teams and go, you add Aaron Rodgers, now they become a Super Bowl contender. And I had to take a really hard look at that and figure out whether or not that is a actual possibility. And some think Denver is. What the question then is about, what's the package look like in return to Green Bay? What do they get as a king's ransom? They got to get a veteran quarterback because they don't know what Jordan Love is yet. That was a 3-year project when they drafted him. That's why they drafted him. They had 3 years left on Aaron Rodgers' contract. That was the plan. Now that would get escalated quickly, and either he would have to play or they would have to get a veteran in the trade. That's why the San Francisco 49ers trade looked so enticing. He would go to San Francisco. They would get Jimmy Garoppolo in that trade, plus the 3rd overall pick and possibly another 1st-round pick. I think it's going to take at least 2 1st-round picks, possibly last year's 1st-round pick for a team. So let's say Denver's 2022 and 2023 1st-round picks, as well as Jerry Jeudy, I think is what that would take, along with Teddy Bridgewater and maybe even another player as well. That's what it would take for them to give up on Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron may ultimately hold their hand to the fire by saying, okay, I'm just going to retire. So now they get nothing for Aaron. They don't have a quarterback other than Jordan to play next year, similar to what Carson Palmer did, if you recall correctly, with the Cincinnati Bengals. He threatened Mike Brown and ownership that he was just going to retire. And Hugh Jackson down the line pulled the trigger on making the trade with the Oakland Raiders at the time, and that's what got movement going there. I can't imagine he would walk away from that much money. He is a different cat. I've spent a lot of quality time with him in the off season playing golf. For being a global superstar, there is a humanity to him that you don't normally see. Living in LA, I spend a lot of time with movie stars and television stars and people who are famous. And it's really interesting to see the people there's no way you can not be affected by it, but those who understand it's a big joke, right? It's not real. And Aaron Rodgers is one of them. He understands that what he's getting to experience is a pipe dream, but he holds grudges. That's the one thing about him that may be a character defect in him, is that he holds grudges. And he simply has. He held grudges with Mike McCarthy, and he was his head coach for years because he was on that San Francisco 49ers staff and they didn't draft him.
Yep.
That was something he held for years, and then he felt great with the fact that he had a hand in probably getting him fired too. So I don't think he's as petty as wanting the general manager fired, but I know that those two can't coexist together. And I guarantee if they trade Rodgers and Rodgers goes on to win a Super Bowl somewhere else, Gutekunst and their president, they're going to be fired. They'll get fired for not making this work. They don't want to discard a 1st-round pick, but if I'm them, I'd pull a New England Patriots situation here, and I'd trade Jordan Love. That would be a first step, I think, in terms of you don't need the next guy, right? You have the next guy. Tom Brady from age 38 to 43 won 3 Super Bowl championships. Okay, that's what the future is for Aaron Rodgers. That's the way people got to look at it. Green Bay has a possibility of winning 3 championships over the next 4 years if you don't implode it. You're not going to have a chance to win a championship with Jordan Love over the next 4 years. Sorry.
Do you ultimately think that would alleviate a lot of that pressure and grudge, as you say? Now it has been well documented. I read it this morning just to make sure I had this correct. When Rodgers came in to back up Brett Favre was not welcoming to Aaron Rodgers for a long time. They're good friends today, but it was not like that for the first 2-3 years. He was very vocal about, it's not in my contract to teach this kid, I'm the guy, whatever. Aaron Rodgers on the other side has been welcoming, if you want to call that, to Jordan Love, and it's not holding a grudge against Jordan Love, the person. It's the situation itself. But if they were to get Jordan Love out, commit to Aaron Rodgers, however long-term until he retires or whatever, giving him an extra, 3-year buffer or whatever, like the Patriots did with Jimmy G. Do you think that would at least kind of like let some air out of the tires here a little bit and get back to business? Or is it just simply more than that? They're not listening to him in the draft. They're not helping him with personnel. He's not involved with team decisions, which he feels that he should be. We've heard other superstar quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, among others, talk about this as well. And it's been contentious in certain organizations.
Yeah, I think we're past the point of no return here. We're like, if we have beat writers saying 5%. Those guys spend day and night with these teams.
Yeah,
they know better than anybody. There's a rumor out there that he was letting free agents know early on that he wouldn't be back after the 2021 season, which limited free agents from wanting to sign with Green Bay this offseason. So,
right.
It looks unrepairable, but Green Bay still holds the cards in all this. The only cards that Aaron Rodgers holds is not playing. And what he ultimately is asking for is to play, just not there. I don't think he really wants to walk away. I don't think, honestly, that Jeopardy host is a real thing.
Yeah.
It may be at some point, but I think it's just, it's not what, I wouldn't say I wouldn't want to say it would be a slap in the face to Alex Trebek, but for what that guy accomplished forever, I would suspect that someone else with a lot of experience in that realm would be a better fit. But it's fun to think of because he's such a fan and he did such a good job, and he respected Alex Trebek and the show and everything with it, and I think he would do a fine job, except we can't realistically believe that a guy that's going to make $35 million and try to win a Super Bowl championship is going to be okay just walking away from all that. So right now, the Green Bay Packers still really hold that card, and we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. We're going to talk to Eric Edholm here in about 10 minutes, Yahoo sports writer. He had all things draft related, and he can fill us in a little bit on the NFL in a whole, in particular, this situation with Aaron Rodgers. But let's go to one of our great sponsors in Sunfair. All right. Sunfair is a personalized, delivered, healthy meals group here in Los Angeles and in the Phoenix area. Go to sunfair.com, click on all your information, fill it out, click on Carl Farrow as your sales representative, and then, of course, click on the RDL show about where you heard it. It's changed my life, really. My look, as you can see, from coming up on a year. I started this July 3rd of 2020, so we're coming up on about 10 months of being on this thing. I have maintained a weight between 225 and 235 for probably the last 6 months. The food is amazing, and it's been all about the food. I started training again this week because I got down to a weight where I want to just, lean up and everything like that. But the food has been the difference. The food has been the absolute difference. So if you live in the Los Angeles or Phoenix area, go to sunfair.com now. A wonderful sponsor of ours. And I just had some chocolate pudding before the show. You think chocolate pudding, how can that be good for you? Well, it's made out of coconut oil, avocados, honey. It was beyond belief good. So, all right. The draft, which has been overshadowed completely by this Aaron Rodgers news, is going to be the main topic with our guest here at the top of the hour, Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports. He does a huge deep dive into the draft. He's going to help us with the early winners and losers of this year's draft. It's silly to think in those terms because none of them have played yet. We probably don't know who really wins these drafts until 2 or 3 years down the line. But it's always fun to pontificate and look at things differently. If you had to pick, Sky, a couple teams that you thought were winners in this year's draft, and a couple teams that you thought struggled a bit. What were they in your opinion?
Well, I'll do a bit of a homer call here, and I'll go with my 49ers off the top. I just think the quarterback situation needed to be fixed. I don't hate Jimmy Garoppolo, but I just think it needed a time for a change, and getting a rookie quarterback, then moving up, landing Trey Lance. I liked that as a fan. The rest of their lineup I actually liked a lot as well. A couple running backs just for their stable there. We saw last year 5 different running backs got injured in San Francisco. That's happened 2 years in a row, and they're trying to lead the league in rushing. That's what Shanahan wants to do, and they just had, luckily, they had the stable of running backs. Not many teams do. This year, heading into the season, they have 6 running backs, including Kyle Juszczyk, who's kind of a hybrid, fullback, H-back there. I like the Bears landing Justin Fields. I also like the Ravens and the Browns, and I really think that AFC North, I think the NFC West is the strongest overall division in football. All 4 teams, very good. I think there's obviously it's top heavy-ish, but any of those 4 could win if different things happen, win the division. The AFC North now, with the Steelers and the Ravens running it for the last 20 plus years, is very interesting to me. And I think that the Browns, who made a run last year and were a couple of plays away from beating the Chiefs in the playoffs, I think they have a legitimate chance to possibly win the division and make a real run in the AFC.
So no losers.
Losers. The Raiders. It's hard to get away from the Raiders, in my opinion, and I hate to keep jumping on the Raiders, but it's just there's certain picks and there's certain players. They drafted 3 safeties. They just picked up Casey Hayward from the Chargers yesterday, which is a great pickup, but they're trying to. It's almost like they're patching more holes than they have, and they have a lot of holes, but they're patching the wrong ones. We talked about Leatherwood going as their first pick at offensive tackle. I think he's going to be fine, and he's a big player, played for Alabama, offensive player of the year, and things. I think he's going to be a great player individually, but there were other options at that pick where they were in the first round that they could have made a dent. I wasn't very impressed with them, and Dallas, I think, filled a bunch of holes on defense, which is great, but we'll just see how these guys pan out, and if Jerry, turns his corner on that, and if Dak can be healthy, if this team can actually rebound here and get to where everybody thinks they should be, not winning a playoff game in decades, frankly, and not being to a Super Bowl, I should say, in decades. So with Dak returning and a defense recovering, we'll see what happens with Dallas. But those 2 teams are a little
not winning a playoff game in a long time either. They beat Detroit on a flunky thing a few years back. All right. For me, I would go. I thought the Jets had an unbelievable draft. What they did with the first 3 picks. They already did more for Zach Wilson with picks 2 and 3 for them than they ever did for Sam Darnold during his time there. So I thought they had a wonderful draft. Now, I think the bigger issue is the systemic problem of being the Jets. But the draft, I felt, was very well done, and that's where you start. You get a new head coach, and you try to draft well, and you hope it turns around. Cleveland, I'm with you there. I thought did a tremendous job. I like Chicago being bold, going up to get Justin Fields. Unfortunately for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, they may be in an Anthony Lynn situation where they draft their franchise quarterback for the future, but aren't going to be around to actually watch him, grow up and be the leader that they drafted in that moment. Losers, way too early, of course, but I think the whole state of Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers Pittsburgh Steelers took a running back in the first round and then took a tight end in the second round. Neither one of those guys are going to matter at all when you don't have an offensive line in front of them. And they lost 3 big pieces, and they did not address it until later in the draft when they could have easily done that and gotten guys like a tight end or a running back later in the draft that could have been just as impactful, because Najee Harris ain't running through anything if there's no holes for him. And Ben Roethlisberger's not throwing to those receivers if he's on his back all the time. So for me, and then Philadelphia and all the shenanigans they went through, and starting at 6, moving to 12, going to 10, taking a wide receiver, and then the nonsense in the draft room, they were not happy about what some of the things went down when, especially with the scout. So I like to say the whole state of Pennsylvania had a rough draft over the weekend.
I wanted to ask you about your Steelers there, and I was going to bring them up as well, and just kind of stick in the AFC North for a second. So last year the Steelers win the division 12-4, but the Ravens and the Browns also made the playoffs. So all three teams, Ravens and Browns, were 11-5. So very, very good teams, and we'll see what happens with the Bengals over the next couple of years with Joe Burrow and their development in general. But back to the Steelers, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth should be good players in general, but that was their first and second round picks. They got two offensive linemen. Center Kendrick Green out of Illinois in the third, and Dan Moore Jr. out of Texas A&M, offensive tackle in the fourth. But they didn't address those till day two, late day 2, day 3. And we just saw Villanueva, longtime Steeler, go to the rival in the Ravens. They also lost Fryer up front as well, and then Pouncey retired. So Big Ben, I think, is going to be in serious trouble. And I've talked about this on my podcast as well. I'm straight up, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm nervous. The Ravens are reloading. The Browns are only ascending. And Big Ben came back for one more go at it. But unfortunately, they're going to win games. They're a good defense. They're well coached. If Ben stays healthy, they're going to be in the hunt for sure. They could even do a wild card spot. But as far as running the division, I just don't think it's going to happen for the Steelers. And if they can't get it done and reload at quarterback moving forward, they could be on the bottom looking up for a while.
Just extended Mike Tomlin to a contract extension. 3 head coaches in the last 4 decades. Pretty darn good. It's consistency there. But if it becomes a team of mediocrity, that could ultimately, move the hand of the Rooney family to where they have to look elsewhere or do something different.
Well, that's great. Ryan, we have Eric here if you'd like to bring him in.
Well, our next guest is a tall man. He talks about football and writes about football a lot. He's a friend of mine, and he's going to become a great friend of the show here from Yahoo Sports, Mr. Eric Edholm. Eric, what's up, big fella?
Well, I'm tall, but you're tall too, man. I'm sorry, I got tangled up in cords. So I'm 6'5". How tall are you?
I'm just about 6'7". So we could have a tall guy show if we needed to. Did you get the kids all right? Everything good?
Everything's good. If I don't get strangled by my IFB here, yeah, I'll be all right.
You're all right. So we were talking about the draft. We were picking way too early winners and way too early losers. I said the state of Pennsylvania may have been the biggest loser in this year's draft with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't know if you know my philosophy as well as my cohorts on my show here, but I don't believe you draft wide receivers high. I don't believe you draft running backs in the first round. I believe you fill pieces if you need it, if you're good enough, like Kansas City a year ago, picking up Edwards-Helaire, because guess what? I mean, they were as complete a team as there was.
Right.
But I look at those as wasted picks because you can find those pieces later in the draft. Justin Jefferson was probably the best pickup at wide receiver a year ago.
Right.
Yet it didn't translate into wins and losses. It just was a bunch of awesome statistics for fantasy owners, really. And I think you can find wide receivers in the value up and down the draft board. And so I give Philadelphia and Pittsburgh kind of an L this weekend.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really liked parts of the Eagles draft a lot. I mean, I can't wait to, I should say I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Landon Dickerson is healthy because I think he's going to be a fine guard or center wherever he ends up. A couple interesting mid-round picks like Kenneth Gainwell. Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech is a good athlete. But your point about the receivers is a fair one. I mean, we've seen plenty of first-round wideouts not pan out, be sort of stuck in situations with so-so quarterbacking where they can't get unlocked. Devontae Smith is such a competitor, though, and I realize the weight is going to be a talking point until he does something. But I'm fascinated to see how he turns out. Pittsburgh, I mean, ignoring offensive line until the third round is definitely questionable. I love Najee Harris. I think Pat Freiermuth. Yeah, I mean, I think they're good players, but
yeah.
The positional value is certainly worth raising. Absolutely.
Tolbert pretty much told me to go screw myself by saying, we don't care. We don't care he was the best player at that moment. We're drafting him. He's our guy, And so, hey, also he's the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm hosting my own YouTube show with there's a big difference there. Yeah. Well, you've enlightened that. You're going to enlighten this show. We're probably going to get 100 subscribers more because of you today. I thought the Jets did more for their quarterback position in this weekend's draft than they did in 3 years for Sam Darnold while he was there. Talk to us about the Jets draft a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. Their first 4 picks were on offense. I mean, trading up and giving up a lot for Ali Vera-Tucker, but I really like the guy. Obviously, you're on the West Coast. I know you've probably seen him quite a bit. I think he and Becton could make a phenomenal pair. And if you want to talk about, giving them something to work with, Elijah Moore, I mean, you can scheme him into touches all over the field. You can get him the short stuff, and he's got that make you miss ability. You can try to send him long. They didn't do it a ton, but they did it some at Ole Miss. And every game but one, I think he caught 10 passes. I think he had 10 or more every single game except the Arkansas game, if I'm not mistaken. He was just a volume target for them this season. And Michael Carter in round 4, I thought was a really smart pickup as well. And so those 4 guys, Mike LaFleur bringing the Kyle Shanahan offense over, couple pieces already in place. They signed Corey Davis in free agency. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to like the way this thing is looking, even if I have my questions about Wilson, because I think he's really talented, but he's got to cut out some of the YOLO ball, the freewheeling play that is exciting on the college level against, Texas State, but let's see how you do against New England.
Yeah, and overcoming, the systemic issues that the Jets have perpetuated for decades, really. Yep. Your town there, Chicago, the Bears, they move up big time. Grab Justin Fields, probably the biggest move in excitement of the first round, taking him number 11 in what arguably could be Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace's final years. Their contracts weren't renewed. There's a bit of an idea that could be a lame duck year. What did you think of their aggressiveness and knowing kind of like, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's go get a guy and try to win now.
Yeah, I think once Fields got by Carolina at 8 and Denver at 9, I think it was, Geronimo time. I think this is when they realized there was a real opportunity. They simply didn't have enough ammo to go all the way up to. They weren't going to be able to get a trade with Detroit. They weren't going to deal with the division. So once he got by that 7, 8, 9 range, that's when the calls started happening. Dallas makes the small trade 2 spots back. They were going to stick at 12, and so once the 11th pick came up on the board, the only team they had to beat out was Minnesota, which is interesting because Minnesota appeared to give sort of a half-hearted effort. Like they thought, yeah, wow, Justin Fields is pretty good. Maybe we should try to trade for him. The offer wasn't as good as what Chicago offered, which tells you something. They were picking 6 spots higher. So living here, the Bears fans are more excited about this pick than they are about anything that's happened since the playoff game a few years back. I mean, really, it's surprising to see that this actually came to fruition. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't see the scenario where somebody of Fields' caliber was going to just sort of drop to them in that range. So, giving up the 1 next year, it's the cost of doing business. And if you want a great quarterback, and he might be the most talented one they've ever had, you got to pay up.
And now you got a $10 million former QB1 kind of mentoring the guy. So that should be interesting. We've already heard Dan Orlovsky talking about how Justin Fields should be a starter from day one. Andy Dalton's definitely going to have a say in that, being the veteran, the wily veteran that he is. All right. The thing that's overshadowed all of the draft, I mean, everybody's looking so forward to it, and then a bombshell around Thursday around noon Pacific. Aaron Rodgers, A, is being traded, or Aaron Rodgers, B, is so unhappy he no longer wants to play football if it means being in a Green Bay Packers uniform. What have you gleaned from this whole process? We've not heard from Aaron himself personally. We've only heard from sources and people who say are close to him. What are your thoughts on all this, and kind of ballpark it, and what's the chances that he returns to Green Bay?
They're looking slimmer by the day. I mean, Aaron Rodgers seems to me, from afar, I don't know him personally. The only times I've talked to him have been in group settings, media conferences, stuff like that. But all his actions seem to be that, like, this is not a guy you cross. This is not a guy who forgets things that happened a year ago or even 2 years ago. Like, cutting Jake Kumarau and drafting Jordan Love apparently have set him off, and he has harbored this grudge through, an MVP season. I mean, he was a brilliant quarterback last year, and everything seemed to be on the right track. Back-to-back NFC Championship games, this feeling of we're right there, make 2 or 3 changes, upgrade the roster in a little bit, we can go back. Aaron is now putting all that to the side and saying, no, I don't want to be here. This is a general manager in Brian Gutekunst that I do not get along with. He has not taken my input in seriously. He has not asked me what I want for this team, so this isn't going to work. And it doesn't seem like an idle threat. This isn't just something he throws out there and, by June or July, everything's made up. No, I mean, the Packers say they're not trading him, and they say it pretty, definitively.
Right.
Rodgers says he's not coming back. Does he just sit out the year? Does he retire? Does he go host Jeopardy? Does he want to play for another team? We don't know those questions yet. So this is all we're going to be talking about for the next, 6-8 weeks at least.
In particular, because of the cap hit that dissipates after June 1. I mean, this could, for the next, 3.5 weeks, it could just be a ton of this, always talking about it. But it probably won't heat up until after June 1st because of the relief that the Packers would get if they did trade him because of that contract.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's the first kind of hurdle. That's the first time we look and say, all right, it theoretically could happen. I think they would still have something close to $40 million in dead money over the next 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do believe that, they take a hit this year. They take a hit next year if they cut him or trade him after June 1st. Obviously, next year would be a lot more friendly towards that end, but I don't know that they can wait to make a decision. I don't think they want this hanging over their head at the same time. So, this rift is real, and I don't know what the next step is. If they come after his bonus money, if they try to recoup some of that guaranteed money, I think we're at the point of no return. I think the Packers are still hoping maybe there's time to fix this thing. I tend to doubt it, though.
Having not heard from Aaron lends me to believe that could be a possibility. Just if a couple of things go his way in terms of some shifts. But I'm with you. Now, having said that, I don't know if there's a team out there, Eric, that is championship competitive enough than what he would be leaving. Now, don't get me wrong. I think if Aaron Rodgers isn't a part of that team for the last 2 years, they're probably a middle of the road 8-8 kind of team.
Yeah.
He produced it easily, 4 wins on his own through that process. Is there a team out there that he pops into who has the draft capital, who has the wherewithal to trade away enough that still leaves him in a position to be a Super Bowl contender where he can go and vie for a Super Bowl? I just don't know if there is. I looked at the Saints, but their cap situation and all the things they have going on, I just don't see it as a possibility. Is there a team?
The only one that seems to check off a lot of boxes, maybe not all of them, but possibly would be Denver. And the negatives would be you're playing in the same division as Mahomes, right? You have a coach in Vic Fangio who's in a prove-it kind of year. Obviously he's got to do well this year. He may not have a job. I don't know how he'd work with Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator. That's maybe in the, yet to be determined file. The positives would be a lot of young talent at wide receiver. They have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. They just drafted Seth Williams. KJ Hamler's a deep guy that they like. Tim Patrick really stepped up last year. Some young tight ends. Offensive line they've invested in, right? I mean, they had Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bowles. They just drafted Quinn Miners, the center. They drafted Lloyd Cushenberry last year. They signed Graham Glasgow. So there's a structure there in front of them that you could see possibly working out. And it kind of fits what Aaron mentioned, I shouldn't say Aaron mentioned, what his camp mentioned. I don't know what sources close to Aaron said, that he wants to play on the West Coast. It's not the West Coast, but it's on the way, It's mountain time zone, right?
I mean, I mean, I play golf with him in the off season. Am I a close confidant? I don't know. I get a response back after every 10th text or something, usually with
Right.
Aaron. And I don't think he's trusting me with anything right now. My cohort here, Sky Guasco, has some draft questions. I'm going to welcome him into the show, and
fire away.
He's got some draft questions for you because he's a big fantasy guy. So of course, he's got to know going into the season. Take it away, Sky.
Yeah, how you doing, Eric?
Good.
So I noticed recently that you had your draft grades out, and I just want to ask you about 4 teams, 2 of kind of your lower grades and 2 of your higher grades, and just get a further explanation. I did read through the article and have a good idea, but I just kind of wanted to hear it from you because I was interested. Let's start with the Baltimore Ravens. You gave them a C+, and I'm curious. They don't have many holes to fill, in my opinion. Was it the draft of Rashad Bateman in the first round and not going somewhere else, or was it the player specifically over somebody else? Why, in my opinion, was it a little bit low for the Baltimore Ravens as C+?
Yeah, and I was a little bit harder grading this year. Maybe last year that would have been a B-. I kind of made a conscious decision, like I don't want to give out a 17 A's and 13 B's. You know what I mean? Like let's be a little tougher. Let's throw our neck out on the line there and see what happens. But I like the Bateman pick. That's roughly where I thought he would go. I think he was my 23rd overall player. I thought he'd be either a late first or early second. That one made sense. He shows the ability to come back to the football, works well in the scramble drill, competitive guy. If he's 2019 Rashad Bateman, I like the pick. Odafe Owe, formerly Jason Owe of Penn State, second first rounder, loads of talent. They needed a pass rusher. He's raw. I mean, I don't know where he's going to give you, what he's going to give you right away. That move is probably going to pay off more 2022 and afterward. But I liked it. Again, I think, it was more of the, Ben Cleveland, I thought was a, top 150 guard. They got him inside the top 100. Brandon Stevens, the corner they took out of SMU, converted running back, still new to the position, a little bit raw, talented, just don't know what he's going to provide right away. Did like the Tylan Wallace pick, though. I mean, I didn't, and Sean Wade for that matter. So I liked their draft, but I didn't love any of their individual picks to a point where I could raise it much higher. So, looking back, I was maybe a little tougher than I needed to be, but C+, B-. I feel like it's a solid class, but with 2 first rounders and having an offensive tackle position that could have been addressed. I know they signed Ali Villanueva. I was maybe slightly underwhelmed, but they're one of the best drafting teams out there.
Fair enough. Another one here, go to the NFC with the 49ers, kind of the talk pre-draft at the number 3 pick. What are they going to do? They eventually land on Trey Lance, Aaron Banks from Notre Dame after that, and a couple of running backs, Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, who as of today are buried, of course, on the depth chart. But I was talking to Ryan before you hopped on. They had 5 running backs go down last year. And
yeah, no doubt about it.
Thankfully, they had a stable of system to make up for it. So C+ for the Niners.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out for a second. I couldn't hear you. The Lance pick obviously is, whatever he does is going to end up being. I had to hedge on some level with that grade because, look, they gave up so much to move up there, and he's such an unknown. We could look back, and you guys can have me on and throw darts at my face for 15 minutes because Trey Lance could be the most talented quarterback in this class. We just don't know. Aaron Banks, I thought was a little high at that spot. I would have loved him in that 3rd round slot. I had him number 96 overall on my board. So I liked Aaron Banks, a big physical mauling guard, should work well. He's not a super athletic guy, so I kind of wonder with the movement skills, and they use a lot of outside zone. Can he get to his landmarks? We'll see. That felt a little high for me. Trey Sermon I liked. I thought that was a really nice fit. You mentioned the depth chart. Is there a little bit too much overlap with what he and Mitchell do? Oh, I don't know. But it's possible they've kind of run through those other backs and aren't all that enamored with him. But Sermon, I think, is a really nice fit in this offense. If he's healthy and he can stay consistent, it was too much hot and too much cold in his career. He really could be, especially for the fantasy folks out there, he's a name to watch. I would absolutely sort of say that he is I don't want to say a sleeper, but he's in that category of maybe could be a surprising rookie. So, and the rest of their class I thought was solid. Diamador, Lenore, and Hufanga from USC. I'm trying to think who else they got. The Western Michigan tackle Jalen Moore was a pretty good pick at 150 or wherever they got him. So yeah, overall a nice group, but it clearly hinges on Trey Lance.
Yeah. Clearly. The idea, last time there was 5 taken in the first 15 picks, I think was 99. And you really can look at Donovan McNabb and probably Dante Culpepper out of the 5 that excelled. And when you look at the 2 that you think could have the best chance, I would argue they're the San Francisco 49ers draft pick and the New England Patriots draft pick, simply because organizationally they have been the best over time, where the others have been down at the bottom for a long period of that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, fit is so crucial, as you know. I mean,
so crucial.
Yeah. I want to see these new staffs. Like, what's Urban Meyer's offense going to be like? What's the Jets offense going to look like? Is it going to mirror exactly what they did in San Fran? Those are, what is Matt Nagy going to be able to unlock all of Fields' talent? These are legitimate questions, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Before we let you go, wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Chargers and not so much what they did in draft, because I feel like they got a steal with Slater there in the first round to protect Justin Herbert. But what they did a year ago, right? They drafted their franchise quarterback. He had to play much earlier than they expected, and then blew everybody out the water in an offense that the organization now has let go, right? This is a whole new offense. It's strange and worrisome for me, simply because I went through, 3 different offenses by year 2 in the NFL, how difficult that is. People talk about Justin Herbert having gone through that in college, having a new offensive coordinator almost every year. But there was a reason why people really weren't, looking at him seriously up to the draft. I mean, I thought I knew what he was, but a lot of people were like, Tua's the answer here, not Justin Herbert. What do you think about the decision to move on from Anthony Lynn and then to hire a new offensive coordinator who's going to run a completely different offense than what he did as a record-breaking quarterback in year 1?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you bring up, especially since all the talk has been on their draft class, which I liked a lot. And what's Herbert? What we saw in year 1 was fantastic. What's he going to be in year 2? But I think you have to bring that up. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's Joe Lombardi who, had his struggles in Detroit, and he got thrown in there. He'd come from the Saints. Everybody thought, okay, he's watched Sean Payton and Drew Brees operate for years. Let's see what he can do up in Detroit, kind of helping revive Matthew Stafford. I think he was 4 years into his career at that point. I don't remember exactly, but it didn't really work out. The offense as a whole lacked an identity. Stafford was very diplomatic about it, but you could tell there was some frustration about what they were doing passing concept wise and everything. So there is that fear of a brand new staff not maximizing Herbert the way that Lynn and his staff did. Absolutely. But they do have what appears to be a better offensive line skill wise.
Yeah.
They add Josh Palmer,
Lindsey, right?
Yeah. Look, I kind of like the look of the offense in general, but yeah, right. Corey Linsley at center is going to be huge for him if they can keep Brian Bulaga healthy. Slater at left tackle. Matt Filer, I think, is a pretty good player. So
they got the receivers. They got, they are ready. They're rolling. If they stay healthy on defense, I agree with you. Eric Edholm, everybody from Yahoo Sports. Thanks, buddy, for joining us. I haven't seen you. It's been pre-pandemic,
right?
But it was good to see your face again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I had this stomach issue and I dropped 15 pounds, so I'm no longer embarrassed to have, I don't have that fat boy.
Remember the last time you saw me? I was probably 75 pounds heavier then.
Is that right? Is that how much you were? Gosh, well, we both lost weight. I didn't lose as much as you. Congrats on that. That's a good thing to hear.
Yeah, I like it. You look good, brother. It's good to talk to you. Thanks for taking time.
Good seeing you, fellas. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you.
Eric Edholm, everybody from Yahoo Sports, for joining us. Man, that dude is locked in on the draft.
Yeah.
He knows every pick.
I was just gonna say that it was so cool to have him just kind of off the top, they drafted him in the 3rd round, him in the 5th round, it's a great to have a mind like that. It was a wonderful guest.
He is a wonderful mind. and probably did a bunch of celebrating this weekend after getting done with his draft thing. Maybe had a few Athletic Brews, huh? Athletic Brewing, everybody, one of our sponsors, non-alcoholic brews in IPA or light beer form. No alcohol. Go to athleticbrew.com, click on the link, and you'll get 10% off your first 2 6-packs delivered right to your house. Enjoy with a cold, refreshing Athletic Brew, no alcohol, none of the consequences, still the great taste. All right. Before we get into the Q&A with our cohorts here, I wanted to look at a story that's got some traction today around DK Metcalf. Sounds like he's going to try to qualify for the U.S. Olympic team in the 100 meters. Our friend Jonathan Rifkin goes to Next Gen Stats with this. On the interception return with Buda Baker, he chased him down with the equivalency of like a 9.80 100-meter dash, which would qualify him on the Olympic team. I'm not buying it. Those guys train year-round like crazy for this one explosive moment. DK has been preparing to play football. He has been preparing to run a competitive track and field event. So I have some hesitation. But, I mean, what an incredible story it would make if this guy steps into the qualifying shoots and makes it on the Olympic team as a 100-meter sprinter.
So he does have a long way to go. I think it's a cool story. We saw him chase down Buda Baker, one of the most phenomenal football plays I've ever seen ever. I mean, he chased him out like 80 yards and caught him. It was incredible. So basically, he's looking to be one of 16 competitors to run the 100-meter dash in track and field Golden Games and Distance Open, which is the precursor to the Olympic trials. So he has to qualify for the games first, then he has to qualify for the trials, then he has to do well at the trials to actually get into the Olympics. So to say it's a long shot, I think is even under exaggerating.
Do you remember my answer to Jonathan?
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
You don't buy it. He's got a long way to go. I think just to have some fun with it for a second, if he were to actually go through with it,
we're a fun show.
We're a fun show,
everybody.
I think the conversation, which is interesting and what I read is, now pads today, Ryan, are not what they used to be when you played. I have said forever, I've been a football fan for 30 years. I've said forever, if Barry Sanders wore the pads that, let's say, Alvin Kamara wears today, I don't know if Barry Sanders would have been tackled ever. He wore pads that were like 4 feet in diameter.
You've seen mine. They were huge, right?
It's silly. So DK's uniform is not what it used to be as far as weight and pads, whatever. However, he's going to be running this without padding on. There's at least an 8-pound helmet and whatever the padding is. So they're giving him a little bit of that. And it's an interesting experiment between what we've talked about forever in the sports world, which is football speed versus track and field speed, comparing the combine usually to NFL players on the field, running the 40 in spandex versus actually having game speed. Clearly, DK Metcalf ran a 4.3, and then he ran probably even faster than that at 22 plus miles an hour in the game with pads on to chase down Buda Baker. So I think he also has a long shot. I think it's a fun story to monitor, and they reeled me in, man. I will be paying attention. I got to be honest.
Well, maybe if he snorted some hot sauce. Maybe that would
help.
Maybe some Bomb Banana, huh? Bomb Banana hot sauce. It is you can find it at seekthespice.com. A couple buddies in their dorm room at the University of Michigan, Boo Go Blue, made this product, right? With 2 different kind of spices, right? We're talking about a more spicy version, the Mooey Mooey, and a more mild version, the white, of course, face versus the red face. You do the math there. Go to seekthespice.com. That's seekthespice.com, all one word. And today you can receive 10% off your first order by using the promo code LEAF, LEAF, like on a tree, at checkout. Bomb Banana hot sauce, everybody. I don't recommend snorting it. I was just, that might help DK Metcalf. But
it's delicious, but I also would not do that.
Yes, it is hot. It's very hot, right? All right, so we had a little interaction with some fans today. Let's go to some questions there. Question of the day, of course, which team would Aaron Rodgers make an immediate Super Bowl contender? We asked Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports a little bit ago. He thought the only place might be Denver, and that may be a stretch. I thought New Orleans was probably the best spot, but they just don't have the wherewithal to make a trade to get it done. To go back the other way, maybe the Las Vegas Raiders, but they're such a mess. I feel like on the defensive end and in the front office, really. What's Aaron Rodgers going to do now? Looking at the grimacing John Gruden, I don't see that working either. So I don't know if there's an actual landing spot for him where he could win a championship, other than right now that's best suited than Green Bay.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think a fun team to consider would be Washington. They don't have, I mean, Fitzpatrick's the same age, but doesn't have the allure, obviously, of Aaron Rodgers. And they don't really have people behind him to looking to the future right now in Washington. They have an incredible defense, young defense, great pass catchers on the outside, great run game as well, great coaching, and in a division that I think Aaron Rodgers could crush if the Cowboys don't get it together. So Washington, to me, would be the best landing spot. Now, Denver's interesting, Ryan. Do you think now Aaron being the competitor and having the chip on his shoulder now and now wanting to prove people wrong like Tom Brady late in his career, to the common fan, Aaron Rodgers has nothing to prove to fans, but to himself and the league and everything that's undergone, like Tom Brady did the last year. Do you think Aaron wants to go, let's just say he wants to go to Denver to compete with Patrick Mahomes, and let's be honest, Justin Herbert and the team's getting better as well? Or do you think it would be something where he might want to detour from that? Not that he's quote unquote afraid of Patrick Mahomes, but wants to do his own thing and meet Mahomes in the championship, which would be maybe a Washington. Just your thoughts on that quick. Like, would it be an allure to play against Mahomes and beat him? Or,
yeah, I mean, he's a competitor. He's a competitor. He wants to beat the best. He's always wanted to do that. But he also is a guy that, like, he's accomplished what he wants to accomplish. Now, of course, he would have loved to have won another Super Bowl so he could hold that over Brett Favre as that he got that done. Our friend Bill Powell says, I say Aaron Rodgers packs up and goes home. I don't think he goes home. I think he packs up and ends up somewhere else. I think that's the only way this thing gets resolved, and Green Bay ultimately will have to make that concession. Let's go to Johnny Rebel here. Johnny asks, over under week 4 of Mac Jones becoming the Patriots starting quarterback. I don't know. Bill Belichick is certainly not somebody who likes to shuttle in quarterbacks. Usually if he makes the statement around a starter, that's usually the case. I wouldn't be surprised if they played Cam Newton for the majority of the year. So I'm going to take the over on this one. I think Mac Jones doesn't play until late in the year when they've got maybe a playoff berth, or if things are out of control where they know for sure they're not going to have a playoff berth, and get him some snaps. I don't think they're going to rush him into anything. I think they're going to allow this guy to possibly be their next franchise quarterback in Josh McDaniels' offense. Like Bill Belichick said, until Stidham or Jones can compete, it's Cam Newton, and I think it's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. I want to go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, any chance it becomes a Taysom Hill thing with Cam Newton, goal line stuff, and having Mac Jones be the quarterback, Cam Newton more of like a hybrid running back, bigger body. He's dominant on the goal line, clearly, but just curious. I
mean, they're going to use him however they want to use him, whether that's the full game or not. He's definitely a weapon down at the goal line. So that will do it for a Wednesday edition of the RDL Show. Me and Sky will be back on Friday, hopefully with another guest to talk about this Aaron Rodgers situation. I want to thank you for joining. As of always, subscribe, rate, and watch us on our socials. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you on Friday.